Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WowBiz, Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. You are a creative genius, right? Or no, you are a scientific genius. That's probably more likely. But nevertheless, you're a genius because you're watching WowBiz, Nebraska. Great. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here with Bruce Aaron. Bruce?
Good to be here.
Good to see you again. And we've got some fantastic business strategic stuff to discuss here today that fits our era and this chapter in history, essentially. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And we have a special promotional announcement that we're going to discuss as well right at the midterm. So we've got a full show. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about uniqueness, differentiation, and branding. You know?
Like branding of a company?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how most people are going to kind of think of it at this point in our conversation.
Okay.
We all know brands. In fact, why don't you tell me one of your, maybe your favorite corporate brands or business brands?
One of my favorite brands?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm wearing them right now. WowBiz hiking boots.
Ah, is that right?
I've never worn anything, this sounds like an advertisement. I've worn hiking boots for years and years. I love the outdoors.
Yeah.
I can't believe these things. It's like wearing a pair of bedroom slippers when you go hiking.
And what's the brand name again?
WowBiz. They're made in Bozeman, Montana.
I see. Yeah. Oh, there's a linkage there to Bozeman.
Yeah.
Oh,
anyway, that came to mind.
That came to mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Heinz ketchup is a favorite of mine. You don't know why. When they added salsa to the ketchup, that really intrigued me.
That was a game changer.
That was good. And then they flipped it upside down with the packaging, and I thought, now these guys are geniuses. I love this. Because you're always going. Anyway, but we're in an interesting chapter here because so many people are unemployed or they're furloughed, they're working remotely. Mm-hmm. And a lot of even those people that are working remotely and are working hard and they have their jobs and all that, deep down inside, they're wondering, am I ever going to go back to the office? Do I dare ask for a raise? I mean...
So they need to brand themselves.
Right. I think it makes great sense for nearly all workers, all the way even including the very top,
right,
to clarify who they are, what they stand for, and most interestingly, how do I live it? How do I project it and actually execute on this basic idea of personal branding?
You hit on it right now, especially with what's going on in the world.
Yes.
As people are finding themselves out of work and all of that, they're going to have to represent themselves.
Yes,
they're going to have to think, what kind of a vibe do I want to exude,
Yeah.
And it's not just about how you dress, it's about who you are as a being, I mean, do people want to hang with you? Are they attracted to you? Are they, for whatever reason?
Yes, yes, exactly right. And it's it's kind of a confusing thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you come to this point in your life where you say to yourself, well, other people kind of want me to be like this, they want me to provide this kind of value or come off in this way or whatever. But deep down inside, after you're in 30, 40, 50 years of age or whatever, you begin to think that, well, I'm really like this. Yeah. And they aren't necessarily the congruent.
Right. No.
And that's
not.
Huh?
Usually not. Actually.
That's a very interesting thing. Because when you have a personal brand, I mean, you've got to be able to be sensitive to what's going on around you.
Right.
Yet, on the other hand, you don't want to compromise who you really are deep down inside. You finally get to the point where you figure out, I think I actually know who I am these days, and people don't like me.
But especially like in a leadership position in business, like if you're an executive,
yes,
you've got to play the role and you've got to look the part.
That's so true.
But you may or may not be exactly what is inside that suit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let's just talk about the components of a personal brand or the dimensions of them. Why don't you just kind of name a few things?
As I was saying, it wouldn't necessarily be just what you wear. I mean, clothes are one thing, or appearance.
Yes.
But it also would be who you hang around with, your network of people.
Got it.
Who endorses you out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of what is your own personal mantra in terms of that you aren't going around doing a mantra. But I mean,
you might have a philosophy,
but you might have
some snappy little idea that kind of
people would look at you and go, or they'd interact with you and go, oh yeah, he believes in this or that, or he,
Yeah.
he's got this value. It's like, what are your values?
That's interesting. There's a little bit of a concern there because you don't want to be defined too narrowly
No.
so that you can't get the job you want or the promotion or whatever, And yet, you don't want to be too broad either, although there is some really interesting evidence, more and more, that I read that talks about the importance of generalists and the ability to connect the dots and people who, they study this topic and they like to study this topic and they also study this, and it doesn't seem to be related, but at a certain point in their life, they actually kind of come together.
Right.
And most people don't even realize that that's going on, but it's a very interesting thing as well.
Yeah. To have your fingers in a lot of different pies.
Yes.
So that you can sort
And-
of.
Right. And then you have a distinctive
change
point of
lanes.
view because it's a fusion of various backgrounds and experience. But let's continue on. I mean, what if somebody says, well, I like Mary Kay cosmetics and I'm big into that whole thing, and so I have pink.
Okay.
And I love to, I have a pink Chevrolet and that's really cool. And so what do you think about that? I mean, that's a clear brand, right?
Totally a clear brand.
Yeah.
And it's, if that's who they want to be and where they want to go and the lane they want to drive along, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, what about the guy who is kind of the CEO type guy, likes to wear a suit and tie a lot, that kind of thing, and as opposed to the guy who is, I don't know, he wears jeans, a t-shirt, and a sport coat, right? Now, what kind of philosophy or verbiage would you think would come from those two different people?
You're expecting a higher level, I think, from the suit, probably. But that's kind of a misconception. I mean,
That
it
is.
probably shouldn't be,
Yes.
It's a
He goes home to
stereotype.
his wife and weeps because he's in prison, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
He could be stale.
Could be. The other guy might be free as a bird.
Free as a bird, loves to go into the arts and do this, movies and film, and hang out with lots of different kinds of eclectic group of people. Right?
Yeah. It doesn't make one better than the other or one more sophisticated than the other, actually, because they can, in their own way, be very sophisticated.
Correct. Exactly right. What else? Why don't you tell me what your personal brand is, and I'll tell you what mine is, and then we'll move on to the rest of the show. I know thousands of people are dying to know this.
I know.
About you.
Honestly, I've never thought about it, I guess, off the top of my head.
You're kind of like Madonna or something like that?
Yeah, probably. No. I'm an artist, so there's an real art side to me, but I guess I'm kind of eclectic because I don't have to fit into that mold. I don't feel like I have to fit into any mold. When I was in high school, I didn't hang with one crowd.
Yeah.
I had friends who were jocks and friends who were stoners and friends who were, just
Right.
all over the board.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I just like people. I like being sort of multidimensional.
Yeah.
So that's a poor answer, I suppose, but I don't have a specific.
So if you were interviewing for a job right now, God forbid, and I were the interviewer, the HR person, and I said, well, thanks for coming and chatting with me. Why don't you just give me your personal handle, your brand, just kind of sum yourself up. Give me a 2, 3, 4 words, that just kind of let me know how you're better than the next guy who's waiting out in the lobby right now, would love to have this job.
I've got a sense of audience.
Now we're going to finally get to it. This is good. This is good.
I think that's an important
I think that's
thing.
a wonderful answer.
Because I know who I'm talking to when I'm talking to them. I guess I'm kind of intuitive. I can read people pretty well.
Yeah.
And so
Empathetic.
I'm very empathetic.
Yes.
I'm to a fault,
Yeah.
actually, sometimes. But yeah.
I think that's wonderful, Bruce. That's
What's
why
your
you're
brand?
here.
What's your brand?
Huh?
What's your brand?
Well, I like bringing opposites together, and because I believe that's where creativity begins, and ultimately I see myself as an innovative, creative guy.
Right.
So I like to go over here. We'll say within the context of business, I like to go over here and I say innovation. Right, innovation. We all know that's a good business strategy.
Right.
But then I like to go over here with another I word, inspiration.
Okay.
See, now until very recently, no business people wanted people inspiring anybody in the office. That wasn't it. Innovate, maybe,
Yeah.
But I'm putting two things together there that normally never have been together before, kind of smushing them together and saying they're better. They're better.
They
together.
complement one another.
Strategy, spirit, right? So it doesn't mean you have to be a calculating jerk to be a strategic guru.
Right.
You also can have, compassion and intuition and these qualities also, and that they enhance. Now I'm going to give you my little slogan.
Okay.
I came up with this. I stole it from Stuart Brand and Steve Jobs years ago. All right, and I did my own thing on it. I kind of spun it.
Okay.
And I've told you this story before, but it's threes because I know three is a powerful thing. Anything comes in three,
right.
That's kind of good. So the philosophy is this, and I sing it in the shower. Go, stay hungry, stay foolish, stay free. That's it. That's it.
That's the song.
Stay hungry. It's got a rhythm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Stay foolish and stay free. Now, they're all counterintuitive.
Yes.
You understand, nobody wants to say, well, why would I want to be foolish? I got my MBA, blah, blah, blah. But, Buckminster Fuller said the key is always to be naive, always be foolish, right, if you want to stumble across what really matters.
Don't think you know it all.
Don't think you know it all.
Yeah.
Always realize, and keep emptying your cup. Your cup is in your brain, your mind. Keep emptying your cup so you are open and receptive to new wisdom or new ideas or whatever.
Yeah, that's very important.
Stay hungry, stay foolish, stay free. And the stay free part is really the hardest. Understanding internal freedom.
Because it's easy to become overwhelmed and encumbered by life, right?
Encumbered, yeah, imprisoned by life.
Right.
Roles, responsibilities, duties, deadlines, and then you start to get to the point where you feel like other people, their impression of you is more important than your impression of yourself, and then you're really in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you're really in prison. So that's my little deal.
Interesting.
I sang it once in front of a bunch of people at NP Dodge, no kidding, 150 of them, and I sang that little ditty. And I made a fool of myself, but it was really funny because there was a conga player there. I played, I charged, I paid him $150 to come and bop out a rhythm to stay hungry, stay foolish, right?
Yeah.
Stay free, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It was funner than you might realize, but it took a certain amount of courage.
It was certainly foolish. Right.
It was foolish. That's for darn sure. Well, we're in the middle of the show right here at WowBiz, Nebraska. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker, and we're going to just take a little moment here and talk to you about the promotional sponsor of this show, which is a consulting firm here in the Omaha area called Growth Dynamics, right? GrowthDynamics.org, by the way, if you're looking up the firm. And what's interesting about this firm, they do a lot of planning, strategy and planning, helping company. And that's so important now, Bruce, as you know, because people are muddled up. They're not sure where they should be going.
Even branding?
Yes. Do branding. We even make up ditties for songs, but that's another topic. But one of the most interesting things that is being kind of floating around these days as people talk about strategy is this phrase about strategic alliances, joint ventures. Maybe we should be partnering with somebody, because if we found the right company, we could partner with them and maybe go into this industry, do something over here that we haven't actually ever done. Right. And this has come up recently when people talk about the Internet of Everything. You know what that is, of course, with all the sensors in your kitchen and in your house, and they're all connected on a giant, computer ecosystem.
It's a little creepy.
It's a little creepy. But trying to get into that requires, cooperation and collaboration with other companies who you may not really know.
Huge.
But you kind of have to work with them and actually really form a cohesive relationship. And so somebody says, well, we'll handle the hardware, you handle the software, you guys do the digital programming. There could be 3 or 4 different companies, and they combine, they work together to form some kind of a system that never existed before.
I've always wondered how that is choreographed. Who choreographs it?
Well, that's a very interesting question. It's exactly...
Somebody has to.
What an insightful question, because what you find is you get these companies that do this collaboration. They think of themselves as the leaders in that industry, okay? That's no surprise, right? And they want to work with other companies that are the leaders. Like I mentioned to you before, Elon Musk and SpaceX working with Microsoft. A great example, they're both leaders in that space rocketry industry, right? But the question is, who leads this parade?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be in charge, make decisions. When do we cut bait and we're done? Or when do we invest $500,000 each and push this thing further? That kind of thing.
I know.
right? And nobody wants to say, well, we're a good company too. We don't want to be led by our nose. We'll go ahead and lead.
Yeah, you got to leave your ego at the door.
You got to leave your ego at the door when you're collaborating,
Yeah.
and you got to trust the judgment of your partner. And so lots of times, really good, viable partnerships never get too far because they can't agree on who's running the show.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, Growth Dynamics can help your firm find a partner, develop a model for collaboration, and so on and so forth. This is a complex and sophisticated process, and we can help you do that. And we're holistic thinkers, so we can analyze the ecosystem within which you operate, right? And suggest different partners, see the trends, how they come together, convergence. Big word.
It helps to have a third party from the outside looking in.
It really does, and to observe how they work together,
Right.
and then use a template for cooperation and communication. So important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got one over here, and they kind of apply it and say, "We'll follow this system right here." You know, and because you become the expert quickly on how to pull companies and frankly, CEOs with big egos and pull them all together. And realize it's more important to stick with the value. That's the key, by the way, as I have learned, is to focus on what is going to be our value proposition. What is it we're really offering the customer, you know?
Yeah.
And then all the rest kind of can fall in place. So many times smart companies and very bright, they kind of cobble together some kind of a loose coalition, and they enjoy hanging out and they have meetings and stuff like that. But they get to a certain point, they're not really sure what it is we're trying to actually make.
Right. It's like, and I'll just go on a little rabbit trail here, like if you have a musical group, a band,
Yeah.
and you've got 6 players who are all at the top of their game.
Yeah.
They can't all try to be out
The
in
lead
front of
guitar
stage.
player.
No, they can't. They've got to just work together to make one beautiful sound.
Yeah, yeah. And it can truly be beautiful at the end.
Oh, yeah.
But they got to stick there. It's got to be harmonious. Right. Anyway, that's the deal with growthdynamics.org, and check them out and ask them to meet with you, and we'll figure out something going forward in your industry. You'll have strategic foresight for 2021. That'll be great. All right, we're back. We are back to WowBiz, Nebraska. Again, I was at Framework 2. I'm back now to Framework 1. A whole different level of awareness. And there you are. So great. All right, so listen. Let's talk a little bit about genius, shall we? Open the beginning of the show.
That's why you had me.
That was my little hook. Yeah, that's why you were here. We're going to finally circle around to you.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that was our hook because I find it so interesting that back in the day, business was never about working with geniuses or their awkward, dorky personalities.
Right.
It was always about just kind of mediocrity and standardization and just getting regular people to be able to do good stuff, you know, and supporting them systematically. But now that we kind of turned the corner on that, and we want these creative geniuses in our midst and helping us leap exponentially forward into the future. So we've talked a little bit about genius before. Tell me what your thought about it is at this point in your life, being a genius and all.
Yeah, got you fooled. It would be so important, especially nowadays with companies trying to gain a competitive edge, working with somebody who is a creative genius, because they're going to see things that you're not seeing.
Yes.
They think on a different level. They see it from different perspectives that you never could on your own. Right. Now, you have to temper them sometimes, kind of temper who they are and their approach to things. But once you sift through maybe the personalities, things like that, it's amazing what you can discover about your own company, about your own product, your own brand, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they work like a mirror in some respects by reflecting back to you who they think you really are. Mm-hmm. But they also are thinking about the evolution of the end user, the customer, and how they're going through some incredible changes out here, and you may not be even the least bit aware of how that is.
Right. You've got to be careful not to get too far ahead of your time in terms of, too far out there, but at the same time, it's so important to be forward thinking rather.
Exactly right.
To try to keep up with things.
Absolutely. So how would you know a genius? What qualities do they have psychologically or whatever that you wouldn't normally, maybe see so much in other people? For instance, I'll give you one quick example.
Okay.
They don't care too much about whether you think they're smart or dumb or whether they're doing the right thing or not. They're pretty indifferent to that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that is interesting. However, if ultimately they're not recognized in some way, they become depressed and anxious.
Yeah, I would say they're also usually very focused on maybe in one certain area, not necessarily, but a lot of times they have a particular bent toward something, you know, but they're very, very good at that one thing, you know, especially.
Specialists.
Yeah, specialists.
See, and this is an interesting thing because I read a whole thing about the opposite point of view.
Really?
Yeah, they called it diffusion and divergence. They said the creative process kicks in when you're not focusing on any one particular thing.
Oh, okay.
And you're kind of surveying multiple topics, whether multiple things that are happening, whether it's the laundry down the basement or Friedrich Nietzsche's book, Chapter 14, or whatever, and you're thinking about all these things kind of fluidly and so on.
Right.
And that's when the aha moments occur.
I see that. I was thinking of it in the sense of a person who's maybe a mathematical genius or something like that. But that's different than what you're saying.
I think so.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I find that very interesting, and because so many people judge others by their ability to focus on one thing and stay with it. And when they're around somebody who is kind of flipping from one thing to another, and they look over in the corner of the room and they see something happening there, a piece of paper, and that seems symbolic to them of an emerging principle of our society in the next 6 months, and so that symbol inspires them to go over here and do something that people are like, what the hell is, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think that's happening. I mean, I think that actually is happening more frequently than we realize, but most people try to cover it up and say, I'm not going to tell anybody else what I'm seeing here because I'm too weird. This is too weird. Yeah. But anyway, I just think that these kinds of people there's more geniuses out there than we realize, and they've been conditioned to kind of keep it to themselves, and they're worried about not, they got to make a living and all those kinds of be regular to a degree.
Which is true, but at the same time, it's a shame if people are constrained when they've got that level of a gift,
of perception.
Right.
And you have to let it kind of go. I think that's part of the process. Is if you can put your ego aside, I think the ego becomes the barrier. Oh, I'm not thinking of enough good stuff. I'm not doing very well. That's all ego. See.
Right.
So if you kind of let that go, you can kind of get rid of that and just as that gentleman who wrote the book Flow, you might remember that book.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about this process of just fluidly moving from one thing to another and seeing that and coming back and, well, that reminds me of this and da-da-da-da-da, see? And so they're connecting the dots and seeing patterns that we're not seeing.
Right. And I would never claim to be a genius, but I have seen in my work, especially if I'm under a deadline and I'm trying to, you got to create on demand.
Yes.
Creating on demand usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
But if you can allow yourself to just release and relax and it'll come to you. And it's kind of that sort of process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also thinking bigger than most of us allow ourselves to think. Thinking instead of about our industry, think about the ecosystem, which is 10 times bigger than the industry.
Right.
Next time we get together, I'm going to talk with you about something that is kind of close to this, but it has to do with the whole innovation thing that we've discussed before. Okay. And you're working on this children's book right now that talks about the COVID thing and hygiene and so on and so forth. So I looked up today an organization, it's a national organization, that focuses on family wellness and hygiene. Yes, it's a national institute, see? And so if you finish this book, regardless of whether or not it gets popular in the channel you're used to.
Right.
This book could be presented to them.
Whole nother platform,
and they could endorse it. Yeah. And it solidifies what they're all about, and meanwhile becomes a catalyst for sales in a new channel or elevates you above all the other idiots that are competing with you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that could be my next $1 million deal.
The point of it all is, we'll go back to the genius thing, is thinking in broader terms.
No, and that actually is a good That is a good application.
That's a good application. Now, when we do our next show next time, I want to see what actual steps you've taken in that direction. That'll be interesting. We'll see what happens, right?
I'll call my agent and let her know about this. Maybe we'll
get her right on that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bruce, Aaron, thank you so much for another stimulating show. We've talked about some incredible things. Personal branding is such a fascinating and personal topic. You know, I'm talking to a men's clothing store right now about putting on personal branding seminars.
Really?
Inside the store. The store is empty. Nobody's coming in to buy any suits.
That makes total sense.
It does make total sense. So we start with imagery. We start with how you're going to dress. And then we'll talk in the store also about clarifying your value system, determining exactly how you're going to present yourself, what you stand for, and how you're going to become a better human being as a result of fully expressing yourself in that new persona.
So you've done a strategic alliance with this clothing store.
I'm moving in that direction.
That's great.
I told them I was going to be meeting with you soon, and they said, well, we know about him, so you might as well get going, because that's a very good idea. All right. Thank you so much for watching us right here on WowBiz Nebraska. We'll see you next time. Bruce Aaron and I will be talking about his future as a strategic innovator, as well as other things. Thanks again. Take care.